Okay, so thanks very much for that, Dorothy. So now the questions. I use the bowl step for my, can't read the writing now, for all of my children, and it works. Could I use it for my child with ADHD?
That timeout is a very good, it's a really good strategy as well. And if you're using it, you should definitely use that with a child with ADHD, but make sure that they know they're going to use it. Make sure, if you can at all, get them to agree to using it before you use it. Go through that whole thing of, I love you very much, I really want you to shine. Some of the things you're doing are getting in the way of that. These are the behaviours we're working on. If that happens, we're going to use our step for a certain amount of time. You'll need to reduce the amount of time for a child with ADHD, though. You know your principle of the age and the minutes and the age. And I can't give you a specific time. You'll know by your child. Some kids can't sit there that long, they just can't. But that can work very, very well. What you never do is no one would ever do this, you never hit a child. So if you have a negative consequence, your timeout is one of the best ones.
Thanks. My child has sensory processing disorder. What can you suggest I say to the school about his difficulties?
Oh, yes. So every year you need to go into the school again and explain. That's the problem. Because we go in and we think that gets passed on, but sometimes it doesn't in their busy schedule. So you go in every year. And I love, I know up on your website you've got the kind of passport idea. I love the thing of putting it in writing. And what I would recommend to parents is you start with my child's strengths are. What my child finds difficult is, the strategies that work for my child are, and you list disco sit, blue tack to fidget with, fidget toys, something to chew on. Be very specific about what works for your child, because that's what your teacher's looking for, and your teacher wants the best for your kids, so they're looking for the strategies. Because sometimes they're like, oh, I don't know. So tell them what works.
Okay, thank you. Next question. My 11-year-old has been diagnosed with ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. The school do not seem to believe this disorder exists. What can you suggest?
That's really sad. On the HAD website, you know, the ADHD website, I think they have literature explaining what ADHD is. ODD would often go with it. One thing I would advise is that whatever you do, you put it in writing so that the person has a chance to process what you said. And what really needs to go in that is, this is a big word, but it's reward deficiency syndrome. Everyone who works with a child with ODD or ADHD needs to get this is a neurological piece. This child does not produce the same kind of serotonin kick levels other kids do. So when we do something nice, we get a neurological kick. We get a release of nice little chemicals and we feel good. These kids don't get that. So when they're constantly getting punished and constantly getting told they're no good, that's on top of the kid who already doesn't hear praise very well. So what you really want to do is let them know the 1 to 4 principle. If you correct once, you've got to give 4 at least pieces of praise for that child. And put it in writing. Put reward deficiency syndrome in writing. I find that kind of melts teachers a little bit when they realise, oh my goodness, this kid, because that child can get very depressed if they're constantly being put down like that. So it's really important that that's in writing and that you get some good literature to hand in explaining what it is, and it is real. It drives me, and the radio doesn't help with this. It drives me crazy, the radio program saying, oh, there's no such thing, and you think, yeah, you just walk a mile, and certain people should know all about it. And be persistent, don't give up, and try and be diplomatic. So you're looking to, with all human interactions, you're trying to get win-win. If you go in with all guns blazing, you'll get them defensive. So go in saying, you know, I really respect what you're doing, these are some of the strategies that are working, and yes, it is a condition because it's been diagnosed, and I know it's there, and here's some more literature about what that is, and if I can help in any way, you know, but try that, but everything in writing, and every year go in again and reward deficiency syndrome.
Okay. And you say there, Dorothy, about getting some really good literature maybe for the school. Where could parents get that from? Have you any ideas?
The HAD website has literature to hand in. There's, give me an email. I have literature that I would give to parents. I haven't made it up. I've got it off the internet. The NHS has a pile of these handouts that you can give to teachers. But if you're stuck, take one of my cards and email me and I'll email you something. But try yourself first. Don't be emailing me without trying yourself first. But there's a lot of stuff out there.
Okay, thank you. Next question. How important is diet in the management of my child's behaviour?
Oh my word. Diet is hugely important in managing your child's behaviour. That's another antecedent bit. If I'd had a couple of hours, I'd have gone through diet with you. Every child on the spectrum should be on vitamin D, as you probably know. There's just too much evidence to deny this. Fish oils are another thing every child should be on if they'll swallow them. So fish oils, vitamin D, and there's a lot of evidence for zinc as well with ADHD and magnesium for sleep. But anything you give your child, just talk to your pharmacy, make sure it's for the right age for your child. Diet is incredibly important. Too much sugary foods, too much caffeine is going to really disadvantage your child in managing their behaviour. And hunger is going to disadvantage them. Two things: you don't let them have too much sugar and you don't let them go hungry. When we're hungry, well, you know this, I know this myself, when I'm hungry, I'm stressed. Hunger and stress are very similar chemically in your body. So you need to make sure they're eating little and often, and you need to make sure what they're eating are carbohydrate based. So because the carbohydrate stays in your body longer, it's broken down into energy much slower. So it stays there. Whereas if you give your child sugar and they're hungry, that's released very quickly. The brain overreacts to that. There's a little thing in the brain called the hypothalamus. It overreacts. It thinks, this is a disaster. There's too much sugar in this body. I'm going to work overtime to get rid of it. And you actually get a blood sugar down. And then if you take another bit of sugar, you go up and you go down and you're spiking all day long, and you can't manage behaviour without a good diet. So good diet, and fizzy drinks are no-no. And diluted drinks with tartars in. Certain things you'll notice yourself you can't give your child. Disaster. Coffee. There you go.
Dorothy, did you say zinc for sleep?
For sleep, magnesium is actually a good one for magnesium. So there's a good bit of evidence around magnesium, but do talk to your pharmacist. But if your child has sleep difficulty, magnesium would be your first kind of thing you try because it's natural.
What about melatonin?
Well, I'm a real, obviously talk to your GP. I think melatonin is a great idea personally, to be honest. And certainly my own little fella would have not slept at all at night. At best he would have slept was 2 hours a night. So if you're in a chronic stage like that, we went and we got the melatonin for Tom, and he's been on it 2 years. He sleeps all night and the dose has never been increased, and it's had no negative impacts at all. I think a lot of kids who are on the spectrum don't seem to produce it, but that's up to you. I've looked at all the evidence and I'm happy, but I wouldn't throw that out, but I would consider it.
I'm just thinking of what my daughter's on, and
mine is on 2 milligrams.
Yeah, so this is the one, but like it could be up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, next question. I have a meeting coming up with the school where they want to discuss my child's behaviour, and in brackets it's challenging. Any suggestions?
If you can at all, remember the last thing I said. Their behaviour is not about you. So go in very confidently. Go in persona if you have to. Pick your wardrobe and wear your high heels if it makes you feel better. Go in feeling powerful. If you can go in partnership, don't go in on your own. If you can go in, if it's at all possible to go in as a couple, do. The two of you to go in together, it really helps. Stay calm. Don't personalise it if you can, and ask them to be very specific. So tell them, okay, which specific behaviours are we targeting? We know that we do a maximum of 5, and maybe we just work on 1. What might that one behaviour be that we're going to go for? And talk to them about what comes before the behaviour. Are there any triggers we might change? And they'll be blown away. You'll have so much information. You'll have your slides and you'll go in. So go in and think sensory processing. Do we need to give that child a fidget? Is that child being asked to sit still all day? That's a disaster. That's not going to work. So maybe that child needs a move and sit cushion, needs a fidget, and the fidget needs to be under the table so it doesn't distract anyone. So go in with some ideas, have chatted as a couple yourself, and go in with ideas about what you might suggest. Good luck.
Okay, the next question. My child's school struggle to deal with his behaviour. Their solution is to send him home. What should I do?
That's a really tough one, isn't it? Because what's your child learning from that? So what does your child feel and think about that? The first thing I'd be looking to do is to see, have they put an application in for an SNA. One of the criteria for an SNA is that the child is a danger to themselves or someone else, or they're a flight risk. So is there any way an SNA could be applied for on that basis? Because that would certainly really help. Have the school tried, if they have a quiet space or a sensory space, have they tried that instead? Give the child a break. The other thing I would suggest is that watch what the child is like when they come in from the yard. Some kids have very sensitive, what I call vestibular systems, inner ear systems. So if they run around, they actually get more hyperactive. And what they need is deep touch when they come back in. So one thing I would try is, you get the mats on the floor, get the child to lie in their tummy and roll a therapy ball over their back with as much pressure as they want. Some kids, you're nearly lying on it, Don't roll it on their bum, don't roll it on their head, but try. That's deep proprioceptive input, and sometimes that's enough to settle a child. You wouldn't send a child home unless you tried everything else in the book. And proprioceptive input would be a really good thing. Using a timer. Are they using a timer? Have they tried a visual schedule? Are they giving him movement breaks? But maybe movement breaks aren't what he needs. Maybe they make him hyper. Maybe what he needs is what I call proprioceptive breaks, which is deep input, heavy input. Have they tried all of that? Have they applied for an SNA? That's what I would advise without knowing the child.
Okay, thank you. And just the last question there. What calm-down strategies would you recommend for dyspraxia children? How can occupational therapy help dyspraxia children? You can't answer that at all.
I won't answer the bit about, I don't want to self-promote, but the calm-down strategies that work really well, that ball over the back is the best tool you'll ever have in your toolkit, where you roll the ball over their back with the pressure that they want, and they'll tell you. That's a really good calming down strategy. Your other calming down strategy is cut the sensory input, turn the lights down, maybe try some soft music that child likes. Some of the kids I work with, it's actually theraputting. Theraputting might work really well with the child, or something to squeeze, or a tent that they can go into with a cushion and a little safe space to hide in. But your best tool ever is your ball rolling, and even rolling it down their arm, or even getting to the sides and just pressing in into a tight hug. Oh gosh, good question. No, it's a very big, not peanut roll. You could use a beach ball, a very big beach ball that's deflated so that you get a good surface area as it goes around. You can also get, Thinking Toys have this long cylindrical blow-up thing that works really well as well. Something like that. It's got to cover as much surface area as you can as you roll it in the back. That's a great question. You'd go home with the tennis ball.
The brushing, the hair brush.
The Wilbarger protocol is a different thing entirely. That can should only be used with an OT, and that can actually cause hyperactivity. So be very careful with that. I would never use that on your own. I'd only use that with an OT. You need to monitor that carefully. Some of you even you'll notice that can change behaviour. With a lot of kids that won't calm them. It's the heavy pressure is the calmer will always calm a kid. Or getting them on their peanut roll, rolling onto their hands, doing like commando crawling, that kind of stuff. Heavy pressure will calm them.